Thanks for tuning in to the Urban Scope podcast. I'm back with more NFL news. Now, I've seen a recent discussion specifically on the Joe Budden podcast when they compared Matt Stafford versus Aaron Rodgers. Now, I have a bias on this topic because I'm a Rams fan. So I'm always going to pick a Ram over most players. But I thought I'll just look into this conversation a little bit more to see where I stand on the topic of who's the better quarterback, because these are two obvious Hall of Famers who have contributed a lot to the game, contributed a lot of stats, a lot of accolades. They both have one championship. They're both, but they had two different paths as well, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. Now, most people will say Aaron Rodgers is the best quarterback, and it's not close. But as I always say, what when you're talking about the best, you that's a general statement. So in terms of what are we talking about when it comes to the best quarterback ever? And when I talk about and it's a totality thing, right? So when you say the better quarterback, who has the better skill set, who has the better athleticism, the mindset, because the intangibles do matter, and that can help you build who is the better quarterback. Now, skill set wise, I'll probably give the edge to Aaron Rodgers because of his pocket feet, the way he can escape outside of the pocket and make passes where he used to be able to before that Achilles injury. The way he can throw passes on the run, he was more mobile than Matt Stafford ever was. Matt Stafford was a true pocket passer. Aaron Rodgers was to a degree, but he could easily escape out of the pocket, and throw a 50-yard pass. He just had that talent. So I think the skill set would go to him. And also his touchdown to interception ratio was impressive. It was like 5-1 at one point. So for every five touchdowns he would average one interception, which is phenomenal. Most quarterbacks, have a 2-1 ratio or a 3-1 ratio if they're lucky, but he was able to have a 5-1 ratio. But I think that kind of contributed to his team's not winning a lot because he didn't take a lot of chances. Now, he didn't throw a lot of picks, but then he, left a lot of plays on the field, I believe, as well. So you have to take that in totality when you think about this too. But Aaron, his prime, was a better passer of the football, I want to say. But he also had better talent, which we'll talk about in a little bit as well. Um, but a lot of people don't talk about Matt Stafford's influence on like Patrick Mahomes being able to do the no look passes, to be able to experiment with so many different passes and so many different looks and angles and things like that. Matt Stafford did that a lot of years in Detroit, but he went underlooked because he really didn't have great teams. He only had really one true number one receiver, really didn't never had a run in the game or defense either. So, and he was only able to make the playoffs like one time in Detroit. But when he got to LA, then they started putting talent around him. You start to see what he could be and what he could have been if he was always with the Rams, or if he was always with a team that was serviceable. But the Detroit team that we see now, that wasn't the team he was playing with. He was playing with a way lesser team in Detroit back then that was winning. Wasn't even making the playoffs in the division, the same division as Aaron Rodgers, ironically. But yeah, he was very underlooked. But he was putting up numbers with Calvin Johnson, and that's all he pretty much had. Um, and we know Aaron Rodgers had the privilege of playing in Green Bay with Coach Mike McCarthy. Whatever you think about him, he was still a Super Bowl winning coach, and he put great talent around Aaron Rodgers, and had great plays. And then Aaron Rodgers had great role players like Greg Jennings, Donald Driver, James Jones, Jordy Nelson, Antonio Freeman, a lot of potential Hall of Famers and a lot of All Stars that he played with. So he had a lot better um, team around him, and also he had the home field advantage because Matt Stafford played in Detroit where it's cold, but they had a dome. Aaron Rodgers had the luxury of playing in an outside stadium where other teams like from Florida and warmer regions like Atlanta had to come and play him, and they couldn't stand for that weather. So he had that weather advantage as well, while Matt didn't. But I think Matt Stafford would still had three rings in that same system Aaron Rodgers would have played in. But I think the difference between these quarterbacks is mindset, because Aaron Rodgers, he can make big plays and win games on Hail Marys and make incredible throws to win the game. But if the game doesn't go well, he shows it in his body language and he shows it to his team. He's showing up receivers. He's arguing with receivers and all these type of things. Matt Stafford just played the game. He never publicly showed anybody up or publicly said this person didn't do this or didn't do that. Coach didn't do this. Aaron Rodgers did those things in interviews and snide remarks, and he still does it to this day with the Steelers, and that what separates him from Matt Stafford. So if I had the opportunity to pick one player to start my franchise with, I would easily pick Matt Stafford over Aaron Rodgers because Aaron Rodgers, for the simple fact, he's just not a great team player. He's not a leader. He's one of those guys who's out for self, and if you're not helping that cause, then you're no good to him. And he always lets that off. He always let off that kind of impression. So when you think about Aaron Rodgers in team building. He crushes a lot of teams that way. In Green Bay, he was so good that they kept him so long, but he still had that mindset. So even if they won 14 games and lost the last one, he would still show up coaches and players and owners and things like that. And eventually they just got tired of it. And the same thing when he went to the Jets. And then I'm pretty sure it'll end the same way in Pittsburgh because Pittsburgh has a history of quarterbacks doing that. I mean, specifically Ben Roethlisberger. So they're used to having malcontents as players, even especially at that wide receiver spot, but definitely, in the quarterback spot as well. And they just added to it Aaron Rodgers. But I'm not even sure why they waited for him for so long because he waited to commit to the last minute so he didn't have to do training camp and pretty much was the same Aaron Rodgers that he is. And he shows up once in every blue moon now, while Matt Stafford is still thriving in LA with, comparable talent to what he has in Pittsburgh, especially on the defensive side of football. They have big names on the defensive side in Pittsburgh, but I think Matt Stafford, I would easily take him over Aaron Rodgers to start a team just for Aaron Rodgers' prime. He got one ring and he had all that talent around him. He had top 10 offenses and he had great records and number one seeds and blew them all away. While Matt Stafford, when you put great talent around him, like you're saying this year, he does things with it. And he's, just as old as Aaron Rodgers, but he still has more talent than Aaron Rodgers and still has more upside and more years left. So, yeah, Aaron Rodgers might be the better first round Hall of Famer with the 4 MVPs in the Super Bowl, but I'll take Matt Stafford, who has no MVPs and won Super Bowl all day, every day over Aaron Rodgers because Aaron Rodgers is just uh, a blame deflector and just a finger pointer, and he's a bad teammate. So tell me what your thoughts about Aaron Rodgers versus Matt Stafford debate. And until next time, I'll see you next time.